Gentlemen, I need to tell you something that may shock you to your core. Every morning, millions of men over 60 sip their coffee, completely unaware that this simple routine may be the very reason their erections have faded. And the same routine could also be the key to bringing them back even if they're 70, 75, or 80 years old. I've seen men lose not just their performance, but a piece of their identity. They stop initiating intimacy, they avoid eye contact with their wives, they lie awake at night wondering why their body has betrayed them, why the part of them that once made them feel alive now feels silent. And the truth is, it's not from lack of desire or lack of masculinity. It's because no one ever told them the real cause. Here's the paradox that surprises nearly every patient I meet. While men chase pills, injections, and expensive treatments, one of the most powerful ways to restore blood flow and revive erections is a simple ingredient they can stir into their morning coffee in less than 3 seconds. And when used correctly, many men begin feeling the difference in as little as 24 hours. My name is Dr. Urologist and Professor of Men's Health, and today I'm going to show you exactly how. Before we go any further, if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do it now and turn on the notification bell. I share practical science-backed advice specifically for men over 60. And I don't want you to miss anything that could change your health or your confidence. And if this message already speaks to you, type 1 in the comments. If it doesn't, type 0 and tell me what you want me to explain better. Now let's move into the heart of this conversation. Because before I reveal what to put in your coffee, you need to understand exactly why erections fade with age and why this simple change works even for men in their 70s and 80s. 1. Why erections fade with age. Most men don't realize the truth until it hits them like a quiet catastrophe. One day, everything works the way it always has. The next month, the next year, things begin to slip. Not all at once, not in some dramatic collapse, but slowly, silently, almost politely. A moment of softness here, a delay there, a night when the body doesn't respond the way the mind wants it to. At first, you brush it off. Fatigue, stress, maybe just a bad week, but then it happens again and again. And before long, you're sitting alone, wondering when the shift began and why no one ever warned you that this feeling, this quiet loss of control, would hurt more than almost anything else. What most men never say out loud is that this isn't about sex, it's about identity. It's about waking up and realizing that the part of you that once made you feel unstoppable has grown distant, as if your body is fading into an earlier version of itself, one that no longer listens as quickly or responds as strongly. And with that fading comes something darker, doubt. A doubt that settles into the mind at night when the house is quiet and there's no one to distract you from your thoughts. Doubt that whispers questions you don't want to face. Is this the beginning of the end? Has my body given up on me? Am I losing the part of myself that made me feel alive, confident, powerful? Here's the part I need you to understand. Erections don't fade because you stop being a man. They fade because the machinery inside you begins to change in ways no one teaches you about. Testosterone declines year after year, not suddenly, but gradually, like sand slipping through your fingers. Blood vessels, once flexible and responsive, begin to stiffen. The artery that feeds the penis, the penile artery, is so narrow, so delicate, that even the slightest decline in circulation shows up there first, long before you feel tightness in your chest, long before you ever suspect you have an issue with your heart. The penis is the early warning system of the male body, the canary in the coal mine. When circulation slows or inflammation rises or hormones dip, that's where the signal appears first. And then there's nitric oxide, the invisible messenger that tells your blood vessels to open so blood can rush in. When you were young, nitric oxide surged effortlessly. You could think about intimacy and your body reacted before you even had time to register the thought. But after 60, nitric oxide can drop by more than half. Without it, even if you're mentally ready, physically, nothing happens. The body simply can't deliver the pressure needed to create a firm, lasting erection. But the emotional impact, the part men rarely talk about, is often even heavier than the physical one. I've seen grown men break down in my office, not because of embarrassment, but because losing their erections felt like losing a part of their soul. They worry they're letting their partner down. They withdraw, not because they don't care, but because they care so deeply that avoiding intimacy feels safer than facing disappointment. They stop reaching for their wives at night. They stop initiating. The distance begins to grow, and slowly, silently, they begin losing themselves in that space. What I want you to hear clearly is this: None of this is your fault. You didn't cause it, you didn't choose it, and you absolutely do not have to accept it as your new normal. Erections fade because hormones shift, blood flow slows, nitric oxide declines, and the body forgets how to respond the way it once did. But every single one of these mechanisms can be influenced, they can be reignited, they can be rebuilt, and they can be restored. And that's exactly why your morning coffee plays a bigger role in your performance than you've ever imagined. Because when you understand how the decline begins, you'll understand how something as simple as your daily cup can become the most powerful tool to reverse it. Get ready, because what you're about to learn in the next section will change the way you see your morning routine forever. 2. Coffee. The hidden potential. Most men don't realize it, but the very drink they've been relying on for decades, the warm, familiar cup that starts their morning, might be doing far less for them than it could. And here's the shocking part. The difference between coffee that merely wakes you up and coffee that restores your blood flow, protects your arteries, and strengthens your erections can come down to a single missing step. A step so small, so simple, so obvious, that when most men finally hear it, they sit in disbelief, wondering how they never discovered it earlier. Because the truth is, the potential inside your morning coffee has never been fully unlocked. And if you're over 60, the way you prepare that cup can either slow your decline or help reverse it. Coffee has always been there for you through long drives, early mornings, workdays that felt endless, quiet moments on the porch, or late nights at the kitchen table. It's comforting, steady, predictable, but as powerful as it feels, coffee alone was never designed to carry the weight of your aging arteries. It can sharpen your mind and give you a burst of energy, but it cannot fix the slow, silent changes that age brings. And yet buried inside this simple drink is a potential almost no one talks about. The potential to become a vehicle for restoring the very functions time has taken from you. When you take a sip of coffee, your heart rate rises slightly, your blood pumps a little faster, and your metabolism wakes up. That's a good start, but it's only half the story. What most men never learn is that coffee is one of the best delivery systems nature ever created. It moves quickly through your body, opens your circulatory pathways, and reaches deep into your bloodstream within minutes. It's like a highway carrying whatever you put into it straight into the mechanisms that affect your mood, your energy, your hormone balance, and yes, your ability to get and stay hard. But here's the part that hits hardest. For decades, men have been drinking coffee empty, without the ingredients that could turn it from a simple beverage into one of the most powerful tools for vascular health and male performance. And because of that, they've been missing out on benefits they desperately need. Improved nitric oxide, relaxed arteries, balanced blood sugar, boosted testosterone, and smoother, more reliable blood flow to the pelvis. All the things that fade with age. All the things that make a man feel the difference between youth and decline. Imagine for a moment that your coffee, instead of giving you a quick jolt followed by a mid-morning crash, gave you steady energy all day. Imagine it helping your arteries open instead of stiffen. Imagine it quietly repairing the very pathways that have weakened with time. Doing it gently, naturally, and consistently every single morning. Imagine waking up and knowing that your first action of the day is strengthening your body in ways that matter, not just physically, but emotionally. There is something deeply powerful about turning an ordinary ritual into a source of healing, because the men who finally understand this shift, the men who realize their coffee has been missing something, often tell me that it changes more than their mornings. It changes their confidence, their presence, the way they feel when they look in the mirror. The truth is, when your body begins to respond again, when your performance begins to return, when the spark you feared was gone begins to flicker back to life, you feel it everywhere. And it all starts with allowing your coffee to become more than just coffee. In just a moment, we're going to explore the first ingredient that unlocks this hidden potential. A familiar spice with the power to heal your blood vessels from the inside out. And once you understand what it does, you'll never look at your morning cup the same way again. 3. Ingredient number 1, cinnamon, the vessel healer. Most men have no idea that the very first place aging damages the body isn't the heart, the joints, or even the brain. It's the blood vessels inside the penis. And what may shock you even more is how incredibly fragile those vessels are. They are thinner than a human hair, smaller than any artery in your entire body, and they are the first to suffer when blood sugar rises, inflammation builds, or circulation slows. That means long before a man notices gray hair, sore knees, or slower mornings. These tiny vessels have already begun to narrow, weaken, and stiffen. By the time he feels the loss of firmness or the struggle to maintain an erection, the problem has already been quietly building for years. This is why so many men over 60 tell me they feel blindsided, confused, embarrassed, or ashamed. They look back and wonder, why didn't I feel this coming, but how could they? The deterioration happens silently. No pain, no warning, just a gradual diminishing of strength until one day something that once felt effortless suddenly feels impossible. And for many men, that moment is heartbreaking. They fear it means something permanent has broken inside them. They fear they've crossed a line they can't come back from. But here's the truth most men never hear. The same tiny blood vessels that decline so easily can heal just as powerfully when given the right support. And one of the most surprising, overlooked, scientifically proven tools for repairing these delicate vessels is something almost every man has in his kitchen already: cinnamon. Not as a flavor, but as a vessel healer. Cinnamon contains compounds that act directly on the endothelial lining of blood vessels, helping them relax, soften, and regain flexibility. Think of your arteries like a garden hose left out in the sun for too many summers, stiff, cracked, unresponsive. Cinnamon helps restore the suppleness so blood can move freely again. And that improvement in flexibility directly translates to healthier erections because erections are nothing more than blood under pressure. When the vessels can't expand, the pressure never builds. But when they open easily, everything changes. Even more powerful is cinnamon's effect on blood sugar. Every spike in glucose sends tiny shock waves through the smallest blood vessels, causing inflammation and microscopic damage that accumulates over time. Cinnamon steadies those fluctuations, protecting the fragile arteries inside the penis in a way few other natural ingredients can. Most men don't realize it, but this single benefit alone can slow or even reverse years of silent vascular decline. And then there's nitric oxide, the molecule that makes erections possible. Cinnamon helps the body produce more of it, making arteries more responsive, more willing to widen, more capable of sending blood exactly where it needs to go. When men begin adding cinnamon to their morning coffee, many report something subtle but unmistakable: a sense of warmth, a fuller pulse in the pelvis, a physical reminder that their body is waking up in ways they thought were long gone. I've had patients in their 70s and 80s describe it as feeling alive again, lighter, more connected, or more like the man I used to be. And watching that spark return, watching a man reclaim not just his function but his pride, is one of the most powerful experiences I have as a physician. But cinnamon is just the beginning, because once the vessels begin to heal, the next step is to activate the mechanism inside the body that controls the flow of blood itself. And that leads us to an ingredient even more potent, one that flips the internal switch behind every strong, lasting erection. 4. Ingredient number 2, cocoa, nature's nitric oxide switch. Most men would never imagine that something as simple, as ordinary, as familiar as cocoa could hold the power to flip a biological switch that many believe is permanently broken. Yet, what may shock you is this: inside every erection you've ever had, whether in your 20s or your 60s, there is one molecule responsible for turning desire into action, thought into response, hope into performance. And that molecule is nitric oxide. When nitric oxide flows, erections happen. When it collapses, nothing you want, nothing you feel, nothing you try can make your body respond. That's why so many older men describe the experience not as a lack of interest, but as a frustrating disconnect between the mind and the body, a signal sent but never received. And here's where the story takes a surprising turn. Cocoa, the same ingredient you may remember from childhood hot chocolate, is one of the most powerful natural sources for increasing nitric oxide in the body. Not candy, not milk chocolate, not sugary treats, but pure, dark, unprocessed cocoa. For decades, researchers have studied its flavonoids, special compounds that directly stimulate the endothelial cells that line your blood vessels. When these cells become active, they release nitric oxide, which tells your arteries to open wide and allow blood to surge through. For a man struggling with weak, slow, or unreliable erections, that surge is everything. It's the difference between a body that hesitates and a body that remembers what it was built to do. Cocoa does something most men desperately need in their 60s and 70s. It wakes up the vascular system. Men often tell me, "Doc, I feel like something inside me switched back on." And that's exactly what nitric oxide does. It acts like a hidden switch buried deep inside your circulatory system. When it's high, the penis becomes responsive again. When it's low, nothing seems to work. Cocoa helps flip that switch back to the on position. And it does it gently, naturally, and consistently without the roller coaster effect of pills. But cocoa doesn't just support blood flow. It also supports the emotional side of performance, the side most men never talk about. even in my office. Inside pure cocoa are compounds like anandamide, sometimes called the bliss molecule, and phenethylamine, the same chemical released when a person is falling in love. These compounds create a sense of calm focus, a soft lift in mood, a quiet energy that helps men feel grounded and present. When a man feels calmer and more emotionally connected, his body becomes more responsive, his confidence rises, the tension that once lived in his chest and stomach begins to fade, and when the mind relaxes, the body follows. Another gift cocoa offers is magnesium, one of the most essential nutrients for maintaining testosterone, muscle strength, and nerve function. Yet, most older men are deficient in it without even knowing. Adding cocoa to coffee fills that gap almost effortlessly, giving the body the mineral support it needs to keep hormones steady and performance strong. I've seen men who felt defeated rediscover themselves simply by adding cocoa to their morning routine. They describe feeling a fullness in their circulation, a warmth in their pelvis, a sense of awakening as if their body is remembering its younger patterns. And what moves me most is watching these men go from doubt to hope, from hesitation to confidence, from fear to possibility. But while cocoa flips the nitric oxide switch, there is another ingredient that works on an entirely different level, one that reaches deep into the hormonal foundation of masculinity. Because even with improved blood flow, without the right hormonal support, the body can still fall short. And that is why the next ingredient, one born high in the Andes Mountains, holds a power older men should never overlook. 5. Ingredient number 3, MKA. The Andean secret. Most men never imagine that the key to restoring the fire inside their body could come from one of the harshest, coldest, most unforgiving environments on Earth. Yet high in the Andes Mountains, where almost no plant can survive, there grows a humble root that has quietly rescued the vitality of men for centuries. And here is the part that surprises nearly everyone who hears it. In villages where maca is a daily food, older men often maintain their drive, their energy, and their masculine strength well into their 70s and 80s, without pills, without treatments, without fear of losing themselves. It is as if their bodies refuse to dim with age because they are fueled by something that supports the very foundation of male biology. Macaca is not a stimulant. It is not a hormone. It does not force the body into short bursts of performance the way chemical enhancers do. Instead, it communicates with the core of the endocrine system, the delicate network that governs testosterone, libido, stamina, and emotional balance. For men who feel drained, men who feel they've lost the spark that once made them feel powerful and present, maca works not by pushing the body, but by reminding it how to function. It speaks to the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, guiding them to restore rhythm and balance, the same rhythm that begins to weaken after 50 and continues to fade year after year. Many men describe the effect of maca as something they didn't expect, not a sudden jolt, not an instant reaction, but a slow, steady awakening. A retired school principal once told me he felt as if someone turned the lights back on in his body. He said his mornings felt clearer, his energy felt smoother, his confidence returned one day at a time, and perhaps most importantly, his desire, the part of him he feared had vanished, began rising again like a tide he thought would never come back. What makes maca so unique is its ability to strengthen not just the body, but the emotional core of masculinity. Aging often brings fatigue that isn't just physical, it's emotional. Stress accumulates, responsibilities pile up, sleep becomes lighter, the mind grows heavier, and before long, desire fades. Not because a man doesn't care, but because life has worn down the parts of him that once rose with ease. Maca acts as an adaptogen, helping the body handle stress with more stability, more resilience, and more calm. When stress falls, testosterone rises. When testosterone rises, a man feels more grounded, more capable, more himself. There are also different forms of MKA, each with a distinct purpose. Yellow MKA for overall vitality, red MKA for prostate health, an issue nearly all older men eventually face. Black MKA for stamina, energy, and cognitive sharpness. When blended into morning coffee, MKA adds a smooth, nutty warmth that pairs naturally with cinnamon and cocoa, creating a ritual that feels comforting and purposeful at the same time. But beyond the taste, beyond the energy, beyond the hormonal support, there is something deeper happening. When a man begins to feel his desire return, when he senses that inner flame stirring again, it brings back a sense of identity that age often steals quietly. He stands a little taller. He speaks with more confidence. The world around him feels less heavy, and the distance between him and the person he loves begins to close. Yet, as powerful as maca is, it cannot work alone. Restoring the hormonal foundation is only part of the equation. The next step is giving the body the raw material it needs to actually build testosterone, fueling the machinery behind masculine strength. And that leads us to an ingredient that not only energizes the body, but directly supports the hormonal engine itself in a way older men desperately need. 6. Ingredient number 4, coconut oil or MCT oil, the hormone fuel. Most men never hear the truth that shocks nearly every patient who sits in my office. Testosterone, the hormone that fuels your drive, your strength, your confidence, and your ability to feel like a man, is built directly from fat. Not from protein, not from vitamins, from fat. And for decades, men were told to fear fat, to avoid it, to choose low-fat everything, to believe that fat was dangerous, harmful, or unhealthy. What no one told them was that this fear slowly starved their hormonal system of the raw material it needed to keep them strong. And so without realizing it, men spent years depriving their bodies of the very substance their masculinity depends on. That is why one of the most surprising, counterintuitive, and powerful ingredients a man over 60 can add to his morning coffee is something almost no one expects: coconut oil or MCT oil. It may feel strange at first, even too simple, too ordinary, but what it does inside the male body is profound. These oils contain medium-chain triglycerides, special fats that don't get stored or clog the system. Instead, they bypass slow digestion and go straight to the liver, where they convert into clean, immediate energy. Not jittery caffeine energy, not sugar spike energy, but a steady, grounded fuel that allows a man to feel awake, alert, balanced, and capable again. And here's the part that lands the hardest for most men. When the body receives these clean fats, it finally has the building blocks to produce testosterone again. Studies show that diets enriched with MCTs can raise testosterone levels significantly, sometimes by 20% or more. Imagine what 20% more testosterone feels like at 70. Imagine waking up not drained, not heavy, not defeated, but alive, steady, in control. Imagine intimacy feeling less like an effort and more like a natural response, like a part of you awakening from a long sleep. I once treated a man in his late 60s who told me he felt like he was dragging his own body through life. He wasn't depressed, but he wasn't living. Everything felt harder than it used to. Mornings, work, conversation, intimacy. I suggested he start blending a teaspoon of MCT oil into his coffee each morning. At his next visit, he walked into my office with a different posture, shoulders back, eyes clearer, energy steadier. He told me, "Doc, it feels like someone finally gave me the fuel I've been missing all these years." And that's exactly what was happening. His body wasn't failing him, it was starving. And once it received the fat it needed to support testosterone, his vitality slowly began to return. There is also an emotional layer to this transformation. Many older men wake up each day feeling tired before the day even begins. They drink coffee hoping for energy, but the caffeine hits quickly and disappears just as fast, leaving them even more fatigued by noon. Coconut oil changes that relationship. When blended with coffee, it slows caffeine absorption, creating a smooth, controlled rise in energy that lasts for hours. Instead of a spike and crash, men feel stable, capable, more present in their own lives. They make decisions more confidently. They think more clearly, and they carry themselves with a strength that feels familiar, like a part of who they once were is stepping back into the room. And yes, this stability plays a direct role in performance. Erections are not simply physical events. They are the result of a body that feels nourished, supported, energized, and hormonally ready. When the endocrine system begins to strengthen, everything that depends on it strengthens as well. But as essential as hormone fuel is, and as powerful as coconut oil can be, testosterone alone cannot create a strong, lasting erection. Without proper blood flow, without the heat, the pulse, the pressure that carries life into the pelvis, even a healthy hormonal system will struggle. And that is why the next ingredient, fiery, ancient, and deeply restorative, has been treasured for thousands of years, especially among men who refuse to surrender to age. 7. Ingredient number 5, ginger, the circulation booster. Most men don't know this, but one of the earliest and most devastating changes that age brings is not in the muscles, not in the bones, and not even in the hormones. It's in the circulation. Blood flow is the quiet engine of a man's vitality. And when that engine begins to slow, everything he once took for granted begins to slip out of reach. The hands feel colder, the legs feel heavier, the mind slows, and deep in the pelvis, where the smallest arteries depend on strong pressure to come alive, the decline becomes impossible to ignore. What may shock you is how much this single factor, circulation, determines whether a man can still respond with strength, firmness, and reliability. Without blood flow, desire has no direction. Without pressure, an erection has no foundation. And without warmth, the spark of intimacy fades long before the mind is ready to let it go. This is where ginger enters the story, not as a spice, not as a flavor, but as one of the most powerful natural circulation boosters ever discovered. For thousands of years across countless cultures, ginger has been treasured for its ability to warm the body from within. And that warmth is not just a sensation, it's blood moving through vessels that had grown stiff and narrow, it's oxygen reaching tissues that were starving for years, it's circulation igniting in areas men thought were beyond revival. Ginger contains compounds called gingerols and shogs, which directly relax the smooth muscles that surround blood vessels. When those muscles loosen, the vessels widen. When they widen, blood surges, and when blood surges, the parts of a man that had fallen quiet suddenly feel alive again. I've had men in their 60s and 70s tell me that after adding ginger to their morning coffee, they felt a gentle heat rising through their body in a way they hadn't experienced in years. Not a burning, not a rush, but a deep, steady warmth, like the kind you feel sitting next to a fire at night. That warmth is the sign of improved circulation. It's the body beginning to move again. And for many men, that simple shift can be the difference between defeat and hope. But ginger does something even more profound. It protects the testicles themselves, the glands responsible for producing testosterone. Over time, oxidative stress wears down the cells inside the testicles, reducing their ability to create the hormones that power masculine strength. Ginger fights this stress like a shield, helping those cells function more efficiently. Research has shown that daily ginger intake can raise testosterone levels noticeably, sometimes by double digits. Imagine what that means for an older man. More drive, more energy, more presence, more readiness, not forced, not artificial, but natural and grounded. There's also an emotional dimension to ginger that many men don't expect. Aging can make a man feel cold, not just physically, but emotionally. Less spark, less fire, less connection to the parts of himself that once rose without hesitation. Ginger brings back a sense of heat, not just in the body, but in the spirit. It reminds a man that warmth is still possible, that energy can still rise, that his body is not done giving him strength. I once had a patient, a 72-year-old craftsman, who told me he felt like the world had dimmed inside him. He said intimacy felt distant, not because he didn't care, but because his body never seemed ready. After a few weeks of adding ginger to his coffee, he came back with a quiet smile and said, "Doc, I feel warmth again. I didn't realize how much I missed feeling warm." That wasn't just a change in circulation, it was a change in life. And yet, as powerful as ginger is, opening vessels, protecting the testicles, igniting warmth, it still works even better when paired with ingredients that support nitric oxide and hormonal balance. Because the strongest results come when every part of the male body works together. And that's why the next ingredient has become one of the most respected natural boosters in modern men's health, especially for older men who want the fastest, most noticeable improvements. 8. Ingredient number 6, L-Arginine, the raw material for nitric oxide. Most men are stunned when they discover that erections don't depend on muscle strength, testosterone levels alone, or even desire. What truly determines whether a man can become fully hard is something far more elemental: the ability of his body to produce nitric oxide. Without nitric oxide, the arteries cannot open, the blood cannot surge, and the erection cannot form, no matter how much a man wants it. And what may shock you even more is that your body can only produce nitric oxide if it first has access to the raw material it needs. If that raw material is missing, nitric oxide collapses. And when nitric oxide collapses, erections fade long before a man is ready to accept it. That raw material is L-Arginine, an amino acid most men have heard of but never understood. L-Arginine is not a stimulant, it is not a hormone, it does not force the body to perform. Instead, it is the foundational building block your body uses to create nitric oxide. Think of it like oxygen for a fire. You can have the spark, you can have the wood, but without oxygen, the flame never ignites. In the same way, you can have desire, hormones, and even healthy arteries. But without L-Arginine, the chemical reaction that opens the penile vessels simply cannot happen. This is why so many men in their 60s, 70s, and 80s experience weaker, slower, or inconsistent erections. Not because their body is incapable, but because it lacks the raw material to activate the process. Over time, as circulation decreases and diet changes, L-Arginine levels fall. And when they fall low enough, the body loses its ability to produce nitric oxide on demand. That's when men stop waking up with morning erections. That's when intimacy becomes stressful instead of natural. That's when a man begins to question his vitality. Not because his spirit has faded, but because his biochemistry is starving. But here's where the story turns. When L-Arginine is replenished, the nitric oxide pathway begins to function again, often more quickly than men expect. I have seen men who struggled for years suddenly feel a surge of responsiveness, warmth, and firmness within days of adding L-Arginine into their morning coffee. Not a miracle, just chemistry returning to life. The arteries become more willing to open, the blood moves with more purpose. The body responds more readily, almost as if it remembers what to do, but needed the missing piece to activate the memory. There is something emotionally powerful about watching a man reconnect with his body after believing he had lost that connection forever. L-Arginine gives many men a second chance, not by overpowering the body, but by giving it what it once had naturally. And for older men, this is more than physical. It's validating, it's reassuring. It tells them in a way words never could, that they are not broken, they are not done. They are simply missing something their younger body once had in abundance. Adding L-Arginine to coffee creates a unique synergy. Coffee increases circulation, elevates metabolism, and widens the channels through which nutrients travel. When L-Arginine enters that environment, it moves quickly into the bloodstream and reaches the pathways where nitric oxide is created. This is why men often feel the difference more quickly than they expect. Coffee delivers. L-Arginine activates and nitric oxide responds. But as transformative as L-Arginine can be, there is another natural ingredient that amplifies nitric oxide even further. An ingredient so powerful it has become a cornerstone of heart health and vascular medicine. And when combined with what you've already learned, it can push your circulation to a level most men haven't felt since their 40s. 9. Ingredient number 7, beetroot powder, the nitric oxide supercharger. Most men would never suspect that one of the most powerful tools for restoring erections, strong, reliable, youthful erections, comes from a deep red root pulled out of the soil. And yet, here is the shocking truth. Beetroot contains one of the highest concentrations of natural dietary nitrates found anywhere in the plant kingdom. These nitrates convert into nitric oxide inside the body, even when the body's own ability to produce nitric oxide has nearly collapsed. And this matters more than most men realize, because after 60, the body's nitric oxide production can fall by half or more. That drop is enough to weaken erections, slow circulation, dull energy, and leave a man feeling like he's fading into someone he doesn't recognize. But beetroot bypasses that decline entirely. It doesn't ask the body to produce nitric oxide. It delivers the raw potential for nitric oxide directly. And this is where the story becomes unexpectedly emotional. I've met men who believed their decline was irreversible. Men who thought their weaker responses meant their masculinity was slipping away permanently. Men who quietly accepted the loss, telling themselves it was just age, even though it didn't feel right, didn't feel fair, didn't feel like the life they had worked so hard to build. Then they began using beetroot powder. And within days, not weeks, not months, but days, they felt something they hadn't felt in years. Pressure returning, warmth returning, fullness returning, a sense of capability rising again inside them. Not a miracle, not magic, biology coming back online. Beetroot works differently from every other ingredient. Cinnamon heals the vessels, cocoa activates nitric oxide production, maca restores hormonal rhythm, MCT oil fuels testosterone, ginger opens circulation, L-Arginine provides the building blocks. But beetroot delivers something deeper. It fills a gap aging creates. It makes nitric oxide possible even when the body has forgotten how. For older men, that's transformative because nitric oxide isn't just about erections. It's about the heart, the brain, the lungs, the energy, the entire vascular system. When nitric oxide rises, a man feels more alive because blood is finally moving again. Many older men describe beetroot's effect in the same way. A gentle surge, a quiet awakening, a sense that their body is responding instead of resisting. A man who once felt disconnected suddenly feels warmth in places that had grown cold. A man who felt doubt creeping into his identity suddenly feels certainty again, not because his mind changed, but because his body finally answered him. And for men who have spent years trying different supplements, pills, or prescriptions with little success, this natural shift feels almost like rediscovery. They realized they were not broken, they were underfueled, under-irculated, under-supported. Adding beetroot powder to coffee amplifies its power dramatically. Coffee increases heart rate and circulation, opening the pathways beetroot needs to move quickly and effectively. Together, they create a synergy that many men describe as feeling immediate. Not overwhelming, not artificial, just strong, steady vascular activation. Something they assumed would never return after a certain age. But beetroot offers something else that often goes unnoticed: hope. When a man sees even a small improvement, when he feels just a little stronger, a little fuller, a little more responsive, he begins to believe that change is still possible. And once a man believes that, his entire journey shifts from fear to action, from resignation to rebuilding. And yet, as powerful as all 7 ingredients are, the real transformation happens when they come together in a simple daily routine that any man can follow. Because the greatest breakthroughs happen not from complexity, but from consistency. And that brings us to the final piece of this journey, the part that shows you exactly how to combine everything you've learned into a ritual that strengthens your health, your confidence, and your masculinity every single morning. 10. How to put it all together without overcomplicating your life. What shocks most men isn't how powerful these ingredients are. It's how unbelievably simple the transformation can be once they understand how to use them. For years, many men have been led to believe that restoring their strength, their circulation, and their erections requires complicated routines, expensive prescriptions, or medical procedures that feel intimidating or out of reach. And because of that belief, they hesitate, they delay, they quietly accept decline, assuming that anything capable of helping them must be difficult or overwhelming. But the truth is far quieter, far gentler, and far more hopeful. The path back to vitality can begin with something as ordinary as your morning coffee. A ritual you've already practiced thousands of times can become the foundation for rebuilding the parts of yourself you thought age had taken for good. The beauty of this approach is that it fits into a man's life without disruption. No steep learning curve, no complicated instructions. You don't need to blend 7 ingredients at once or transform your kitchen into a laboratory. You start with one, something small, something manageable, something that feels almost too easy. And yet, that single change begins whispering to your biology, reminding it that it's not done, that the systems inside you can still respond, still repair, still return to a state of strength. Over time, as you add each ingredient slowly, intentionally, without pressure, you are stacking benefits in a way that compounds quietly, powerfully, and naturally. For example, you might begin with cinnamon, letting it stabilize your blood sugar and soften your arteries. Then in the following week, you add cocoa, allowing nitric oxide to rise again. A few days later, you mix in MKA, supporting your hormonal rhythm. When you feel ready, you add MCT oil, nourishing the endocrine system with the fuel it has been missing for years. Ginger comes next, warming the vessels and deepening circulation. Then L-Arginine and beetroot powder follow, activating nitric oxide at a level most older men haven't experienced in decades. None of this is rushed. None of it is forced. Each step lifts you higher, restoring a part of your physiology that time had slowly dimmed. And something remarkable happens when men follow this path. They begin to feel better, not just physically, but emotionally. Their energy rises, their motivation returns, their doubt softens. They walk with a different posture, a different presence. Not because they have been given a miracle, but because they have reclaimed control. They begin to trust their body again. They begin to believe in possibility again. And inside that belief, a deeper transformation unfolds, one that reaches into their relationships, their confidence, their sense of identity. What makes this even more meaningful is how sustainable it is. You're not relying on a pill that forces your body into temporary performance. You're not depending on something artificial that fades as quickly as it arrives. You're building a foundation, a structure that can support you for years to come, a routine that becomes second nature, a cup of coffee that becomes more than a beverage. It becomes a message you send to yourself every morning. I am not done. I am not declining. I am rebuilding. And perhaps the most moving part is this. Many men tell me they don't realize how much they've changed until one quiet moment, when they feel their body respond in a way it hasn't in years. A moment of firmness, a surge of confidence, a spark of intimacy, a flash of the man they remember being. And in that moment, everything becomes clear. It wasn't youth they had lost, it was support. Support that they now know how to give themselves every single day. But before we close this chapter, there is one final truth you need to hear. One that pulls all of this together and reveals why this journey is not just about erections or coffee or ingredients, but about reclaiming the part of your life that matters most. Let's talk about that in the conclusion 11. Conclusion. Small daily choices, big lasting results. When we step back from everything we've explored together, a simple but powerful truth becomes clear. A man's vitality is not determined by age, but by the choices he makes every single day. For too long, many men have been conditioned to believe that decline is inevitable, that the loss of strength, energy, and sexual function is something they must quietly accept. They are told to expect less from their bodies, to lower their expectations, to surrender the parts of themselves that once made them feel alive. Yet what this journey reveals is the opposite. Your body has not given up on you. It has simply been waiting for the right support, the right fuel, the right signals to remind it how to function the way it was designed to. The lesson hidden beneath every ingredient, every story, every breakthrough is this: transformation does not require dramatic changes. It does not require complex routines or heroic effort. It begins with one small action repeated with consistency. It begins with a morning coffee that becomes more than a habit. It becomes a declaration, a reminder that your health, your strength, or your identity still matter, that there is still more ahead of you than behind you, that you are not done rising, not done growing, not done living fully. What makes this especially meaningful is that the improvements you create in your body ripple outward into every part of your life. When blood flow improves, so does energy. When nitric oxide rises, so does confidence. When testosterone strengthens, so does motivation and presence. These changes don't stop in the bedroom. They show up in how you speak, how you walk, how you think, how you connect with the people you love. They restore parts of you that may have felt distant for years. They make room for joy to return, for intimacy to feel natural again, for laughter to feel fuller, for mornings to feel purposeful instead of heavy. And perhaps the most important lesson of all is that you are not powerless. You are not at the mercy of age. You are not destined to fade. The small choices you make, what you put in your coffee, how you nourish your body, how you support your circulation and hormones, can change the trajectory of your health in a way many men never imagine until they experience it themselves. It is not about trying to feel 20 again. It is about reclaiming the strength and vitality that belongs to you at 60, 70, or 80. It is about refusing to let time dictate the limits of your potential. Men often tell me that what surprised them most was not how quickly their erections improved, but how deeply they felt the change emotionally. They felt awake in ways they hadn't felt in years. They felt hope returning, not as a distant wish, but as something real and tangible. They felt themselves stepping back into a version of life they thought they had lost forever. And when a man reaches that point, something profound happens inside him. He stops seeing himself as someone who is declining and starts seeing himself as someone who is rebuilding. Someone who still has strength to give, someone who still has love to share, someone who still has purpose to live out. So if there is one lesson to carry with you today, let it be this: do not underestimate the power of what you choose to do each morning. Do not dismiss the impact of small, consistent actions. Your body is capable of renewal. Your mind is capable of rediscovery. Your life is capable of expanding again. And it all begins with honoring yourself enough to take those small steps every day. As you move forward, let your morning coffee be more than a drink. Let it be a promise you make to yourself, one that affirms your strength, your dignity, and your desire to live fully. Because the journey to reclaiming your vitality is not a sprint. It is a steady, thoughtful return to the man you know you can still be. And now that you understand what your body needs, the path ahead is not only possible, it is yours to walk with confidence. As we close this video, I want to speak directly to you man to man. If this message resonated with you, if even one part of this journey made you feel understood, supported, or hopeful about what your body can still do, then I ask you to take a moment now to engage. Your like helps this message reach more men who are silently struggling. Your comment creates a community where men over 60 realize they are not alone. And your share may be the reason another man, maybe a friend, a brother, or someone you care about, discovers the knowledge that could change his life. If you found value here and would like to help support the channel so we can continue creating meaningful science-backed content for older men, you can also donate through the link below. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us produce videos that speak honestly, compassionately, and powerfully to the challenges men face as they age. So before you go, like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and leave a comment telling me your thoughts. Your voice matters, your experience matters, and your presence here matters more than you know.